All right, guys, time to work with my enclosure. Now, my daughters did a little bit of painting on this thing. It's a little rough, but I'm kind of okay with that. It has a little bit of like a green and a pinkish mist. Not sure how well that comes up on the camera. It's kind of subtle, but I'm going with it. What I need to do now, I got an undrilled enclosure, which I prefer. I have a DeWalt drill that I use. I've got a bunch of bits, and I've got a stepped drill bit, which I'd highly recommend for this procedure. And at this point, I'm just going to try to mark out all of the markings that I'm going to make. And in the past, I tend to get a little loosey-goosey with this. I'd recommend you try to be a little precise. So if you have a ruler, I've got some measuring tape here that I'm going to use. That's what I would recommend that you guys do. But it's really just kind of trying to think ahead about, what's it going to look like? What kind of setup do you prefer? So, like, do you like top-mounted jacks? How do you like everything else to be set up? One other thing that you can do is take another pedal that you've got from your collection and use that as a little bit of a template. Now, this enclosure is a little different, but it gives me an idea, like, of, with this foot switch, for example. I could put my foot switch, I'm not a guy that uses batteries ever, so I could put it about as low as I would ever want, but that might look kind of weird. So you can really use this as a little bit of a guide or a template. I've got side-mounted jacks that'll tell me how high or low to put them. But ultimately, it's really up to you and whatever you guys want. I think I'm going to go with side-mounted jacks, top-mounted power supply, and then my foot switch is going to be right here, and then I'm going to have my circuit board. Now I've got 4 pots, and I'm going to keep them in this kind of setup. So imagine if this were to go right onto here. And what I'm going to do is, I've got my pencil. I've got a foot switch, and I'm just going to start putting these where they need to be, kind of generally marking with the pencil. And then I'm going to use my tape measure to help me more exactly place it so it's kind of symmetrical and it looks nice. So let's go ahead and make some marks. So I've got my box. All my holes are drilled out now, and I did add some repainting. I kind of, my battery ran out, so I didn't capture everything. But basically, I've got a bunch of drill bits. And I start small, and I just gradually work my way up. And I have the actual component here, and I will physically size it. Like I'll keep going in and out until I can actually get it to fit. So it's a pretty straightforward and simple process, but it works pretty well. Now I did get a little off center, but some of these are a little bit far this way. But it's not such a big deal. I'm not going for perfection here. Just something that works for me, and I'm happy with that overall. So now what I got to do, now that I've got the holes drilled and the paint, I'm going to hit it with a thing of this semi-gloss clear coat and let it dry overnight, and we should be good to go to start assembly. We're going to keep moving forward. Now, one mistake that I made is, if I shine the light on it, you can see there's some marks on here, some imperfections that have come about, and that was mostly because I was working on this case last night, and I didn't give the lacquer sufficient time to fully dry. So, don't be like me. Let the lacquer dry fully and completely. Give it a couple days, give it a week, but, whoops. Got a little impatient. My bad. But we're just going to keep going. So overall, process is pretty straightforward at this point. Just got to keep assembling this thing, tighten these things up, and we should be good to go. One little thought that I have. So for example, I got to take this input wire. It's got to connect here to the input jack. Now, from my days with amp builds, I learned about the importance of having a secure mechanical connection. So what that means is, you've got this little loop of wire and this little circle that it goes into. And when you think of a mechanical connection, you kind of want it to be like this, rather than if this is kind of my circle and I'm just kind of sliding it in here, kind of. So when I'm thinking about mechanical connections, I usually try to do like this S approach, where I hook them onto one another like this. Now you can go a little bit too far and kind of continually wrap that around one another over and over again. That gets to be a little bit too much, but I prefer that rather than if you would, like if this is a wire and this is the circle on the jack that it's got to go into, rather than just having it floating in here like this and then you cover it with solder. You want to actually mechanically bend it so that it catches on there a little bit more firmly, like that. So that's the approach that I take. I have in the past gone overboard with that. The problem with going too far and getting too, like if you loop it on itself, it's permanent, but that means it's really difficult to repair. So with this, I could still repair it, but there also still has the mechanical connection. Actually, the way that this is currently set up, I would not be surprised if this would conduct, just the way that it is like that. It's holding on there pretty firmly. And I'm also using solid core wire at this point, so that helps with that as well. So just a little thought there on tidying up some of these connections. Alright, I already noticed I made a mistake. I put the in and outs directly to the jacks and not to the switch, so I'm going to have to fix that. All right, so I think we are pretty good at this point. I will go and test the pedal here shortly, but just kind of a couple thoughts. This is my input jack. You can see the sleeve is here. That's our ground, and our tip is here. That's our hot. That goes to the middle lug of our foot switch. This is a triple pole double throw switch, meaning we've got 1, 2, 3, triple throw, and double throw means it can either go up this way or down this way. Got another video on my channel explaining foot switches in more detail, but input comes here. It either goes down to our true bypass loop or it goes up to the circuit in. Then our out, it comes out this green wire here, and that is going to send out to our output jack or receive from our true bypass. So right now it should work. This middle 3, I could use it to set up an LED indicator lamp if I would wish. I would just need to tap off the 9-volt and run a resistor. And then the other side, so that would go into one side, and then the negative side would be our ground. That would be on the other connection. So then basically the hot 9 volts is in the middle, and then on the up position with the circuit board, the ground connection is established and the circuit is complete. Or on the other side, it's just left blank. So if I wanted to add that, I could. I'm probably not going to. With fuzz pedals, I tend to believe that you know when they're on. So next step, what I need to do now is test it to make sure everything works. And then last step after that would be to do final box up. So let's go ahead and test her out.